Hello and welcome. This is Health and Lifestyle. My name is Marie Yambo. As usual, our social media handles at Marie Yambo at KBC Channel 1 on X and KBC Channel 1 TV on Facebook. Today in the program.
If you cannot access print media or whatever, or Braille, you have very limited information. For example, if I want to read about HIV/AIDS, I have no literature on that.
We look at some of the challenges facing people living with disability.
3, 2, 1, 0.
And the launch of a Braille booklet on TB ensures inclusivity for people with visual impairments. But first things first, people living with disability face a myriad of challenges in as far as accessing healthcare is concerned. During the International Day for Persons Living with Disability, I got to talk to some of them, and this is what they had to say. Persons living with disability have for long grappled with access to health information.
Accessing information has been a challenge, not unless you fall sick or maybe you hear from someone else, especially people with disability from the grassroots, maybe in rural areas, and those who can't access information, whether in social media or whichever sources of information they can acquire. It has been difficult to know these things pertaining health.
For the first time, people with visual impairment will have access to critical TB information in Braille. The booklets, launched during the International Day for Persons with Disability, aims to ensure they are no longer left in the dark about the prevention, treatment, and care of the disease.
By making TB information accessible to visually impaired persons, we are empowering individuals with the knowledge to make informed decisions and choices about their health. This empowerment is not just a benefit to individuals, but a strengthening of our collective fight against TB and HIV.
Persons with disability continue to face a myriad of challenges in adhering to medication.
Hospitali za saa hizi bado hazijakuwa na hata zile madawa ambazo walemavu wanafaa kuwa wanatumia, zimeandikwa na incited, wameandika na kalamu. Sasa tunafaa kusoma hiyo maandiko inakuwa ni ngumu, because kama umepewa mlemavu dawa ya TB, umeandika pale 1x1, ataziweka pamoja. Sasa hata jua kwamba hii ni 1x1 ama hii ni 1x2. Sasa hiyo ni changamoto ya kusoma hiyo dawa. So kama kumekuwa na zile jinsi ya kuweka hiyo madawa lebo, ili walemavu waweze kusoma na Braille, ndio waelewe vizuri, na kwa ni vizuri sababu anaweza confuse zile madawa.
Speaking during the launch, the Kenya Union of the Blind chairman, Dr. Chomba Wamunyi, said persons with disability have a right to timely health information like the rest of the population.
Disability inclusion in tuberculosis and HIV programs cannot be a token gesture. It must be a cornerstone of our healthcare systems. I therefore call upon the government of Kenya, that is Kenya Kwanza, through the Ministry of Health, to ensure that disability inclusion is embedded in all TB and HIV policies and programs.
The nexus between TB and disability is that 25% of persons infected with TB end up with audio or visual disability.
There is increasing evidence of impairments and disabilities associated with TB, particularly persons affected with drug-resistant TB. such that, according to statistics from WHO, 25%, that's a good quarter of persons who get affected with TB suffer some form of disability. In the past, we have seen people losing their hearing, and some of them are TB champions. People have lost their lungs. They have their lungs collapse because of tuberculosis.
For Winnie Ongoje, the Braille materials represent a new era of empowerment.
It has become so helpful such that the materials will help us to read and get to know what TB is, the types of TB, how treatment occurs, and how diagnosis occurs, and things like that. So it will help us also in the grassroots to go and advocate and sensitize other persons with disability who doesn't have this information.
In Kenya, 139 people get infected with tuberculosis every year, according to the World Health Organization, but only 50% of them get diagnosed and linked to treatment. The launch of the Braille booklet on TB is a milestone for people with visual impairment. Dr. Chomba Wamunyi is the chairman, Kenya Union of the Blind.
One of the challenges that persons with visual impairments face is accessibility to this information, print media, print actually information. You realize, for example, that you people are very fond of reading the Daily Nation, the Time, whatever, the dailies for that matter. Persons with disabilities, and particularly the blind people, have a very great challenge. You cannot just pick a newspaper every day. In fact, I rarely buy newspapers because if I don't have somebody to read for me, I'll avoid it. However, I'm privileged in one way or the other. I can access information through using my computer. So another challenge is that those of us who can read Braille, Braille is very expensive, and very few people can afford to buy Braille books. In fact, I have never bought a Braille book. Just like you would go and buy a Braille book, I mean a print book from the shop or wherever. Blind people don't buy books because they are printed. If I buy a book, I must have a reader to read it for me. So accessibility to information is quite critical. If you cannot access print media or whatever, or Braille, you have very limited information. So you need somebody to fill in that gap for you. But I must say that there are many areas which limits us. For example, if I want to read about HIV/AIDS, I have no literature on that. If I want to read about tuberculosis, for example, no literature. So we at a loss. We are limited in terms of knowledge in very vital issues. However, I must say that we can, though we don't watch TV, we can listen to TV. We can also listen to the radio. And we also talk to people who read for us, like you have said. So that's how we overcome those challenges. Since 1981, when the International Year of Persons with Disabilities was declared by the United Nations, persons with disabilities have had the opportunity to articulate their issues and concerns, particularly in the government, their respective governments. So for us today in Kenya, we have the opportunity, as I've always said, to interact with the government face to face, even to the point of inviting the government, the president and his cabinet all over the country to listen to us so that we can negotiate our issues. Let me issue a passionate appeal to the president if this can reach him. We have cited quite a number of discriminations which we should articulate today. One, for example, we do not have any appointment in the government, in the cabinet. The president, I think, we would like him to consider getting a person with a disability in his cabinet. We would like also the president, like today when you are talking, to consider appointing persons with disabilities, even for ambassadorial positions, because these are things that we can do. We would like the president to consider, for example, having some of us appointed as his advisors in different departments or ministries. Because you see, we need people to advise the president on disability affairs.
Yeah, my name is Evelyn Kibuchi. I'm the Chief National Coordinator of Stop TB Partnership Kenya. Stop TB is an organization that supports a national TB program to achieve their objectives, or rather their targets, through advocacy. Yeah, so we have, I would say, 4 approaches. One of them is mobilizing persons who have been infected and affected with tuberculosis who may be willing to use their experiences for advocacy. We build their capacity and engage them to do community-based activities and also for advocacy. Secondly, we engage in political mobilization. That is mobilizing the political leadership to understand their role in TB advocacy. And for this purpose, we are the Secretariat of the National Parliamentary Tuberculosis Caucus. In Kenyan Parliament, we have a group of parliamentarians who have taken TB as an area of interest that they do advocacy around, and majorly is ensuring that there's allocation of resources from the national government. Yeah, there's a close relationship between TB and disabilities. One, there is a side effect. The side effects of the drugs that are taken for treating TB have a side effects that lead to disabilities. For example, in the few past years, we had drugs that were leading to loss of hearing. That means we have people who have completely lost their hearing because of the side effects of drugs. But I'm happy to report that now that has been addressed. We don't have that effect. But the people who are affected, of course, are still living. They're still there, suffering from that challenge. We also have people who, by the time they're completing their treatment, their lungs have been affected so much that it's either collapsed or it's just a small percentage functional. So that means they have to depend on external supply of oxygen. That causes a disability because, of course, they cannot perform as they were performing when they did not have a tuberculosis. The other disability is this TB that affects the brain, the TB meningitis. And in some instances, by the time they're getting cured or by the time they're coming to be known that they have TB meningitis, their mental health or their abilities has been affected. Again, that leads to disability. And there's a closer relationship in that once you get a disability, then access to basics become limited, access to education, access to employment. So that means that your access even to healthcare becomes affected. As an organization, Stop TB Partnership, in 2023, we initiated a project that was looking into what we are calling the last mile population. That's a population that has been left out for one reason or the other. For the longest time, we have not had TB information translated into Braille. What does that mean? That people who are visually impaired cannot access TB information because basically much of the information is in written form. So you forget there is a population that cannot read. So we started working with the Kenya Union of the Blind to ensure that they are able to translate TB information into Braille so that we can reach even to people who are visually impaired. So we are quite excited today that one of the population that has been left behind can now access TB information. And that will mean more access to services, more access to information. They now know, they will know prevention. Where do we access information? You see, it has been a challenge because once you go to hospital, sometimes you identify the drugs by the color. So the healthcare worker will tell you, okay, this yellow pill you take in the morning, this white one you take in the evening. A blind person cannot see the colors you're talking about, right? But once it is in the pack and the pack is able to say this is a yellow, this is a yellow pill, then we are in a way improving adherence because now they are sure of the drugs they are taking. So we are quite excited about the move we made today. Chapter 54 of the Constitution talks about what is provided for by persons living with disability. We need to start there. Fully implementation of what is provided for in those policy documents. Secondly, we need updated data. The only data that is available right now indicating the data around persons living with disability is from the census, which was in 2019. So much water has passed under the bridge in the past about 5 years or so. So we would ask for updated data so that you can be able to inform policy and implementations. Number 3, we need extra investments for persons living with disabilities. Basically, anybody with a disability needs some extra facility or service. The blind will need braille and white canes. The hard of hearing will need an interpreter. The person with mobility disability will need something to facilitate their mobility. That means we need some extra investment over and above what a regular person has. So we are saying invest more in disability so that they are able to live like a normal person. Sorry, not a normal person, but a regular person. And another thing is addressing stigma and discrimination. It's one of the biggest barriers, even to access to services. So we need to sensitize the public about persons with disabilities, their rights, so that we minimize on discrimination against them.
We've come to the end of the program. Thank you so much, as always, for your time and for your company. Remember to get in touch with us. Our social media handles at Mariambo, at KBC Channel 1 on X, and also KBC Channel 1 TV on Facebook. We are also on YouTube. And on behalf of everyone who made this program possible, Winnie and also Weekly for sharing the challenges they face in as far as accessing healthcare for people living with disability, and of course, Evelyn Kibuchi and Dr. Chomba for the work they're doing to support people living with disability. My name is Marie Ambo, and I hope to see you again next time.